So I'll just tell you, I'll speak to you now about logic of Aristotle. When we consider logic, it is something very amazing, truly very, very amazing, that in the history of human thought or human learning, there is no parallel in, we see in the case of logic. It is something unparalleled in the history of humanity. When we consider logic as a science, it is an invention, or it is a contribution of Aristotle which is unmatched in the history of humanity. Why, you know? Do you know why I am saying this? Logic. When you go to learn philosophy, there is a subject called logic. Okay, scientific logic. So the discovery of logic is something unparalleled in the history of humanity, or in the history of human pursuit of knowledge. In any pursuit of human intellect, there is no parallel to logic. You know why? When we consider any other science, suppose mathematics, physics, biology, biochemistry, engineering, whatever it is, when we learn a science or a new subject, we learn founder. Somebody founded, means who is the founder of aesthetics, or who is the father of aesthetics, modern aesthetics. We learn it is Baumgarten. He coined the term and he is credited for the discovery of a new area of study. For logic, it is Aristotle. Okay. For the scientific logic, Aristotle is the founder or father of logic. But you have to know this. He formulated the theories of logic and he concluded the theories also. In the sense, he wrote a treatise which includes everything about logic. So, for the past 2400 years, when you go to learn logic, you are learning Aristotelian logic. You understand? So he did not leave any room unexplored about logic. He did not leave any room unexplored. And whatever he wrote on logic remained undisputed with two exemptions. So in the late 16th century or early 17th century, there comes Francis Bacon, who teaches inductive logic. So it's an addition to logic. A little more contribution was made to the science of logic. And in the modern times, there is mathematical logic. So keeping away these two exemptions, everything about logic was written by Aristotle himself. In the history of human thought, in the history of human intellect, you won't find such an attainment, such an achievement by anybody else in any other subject. Somebody who starts a subject, he is a founding father of a subject, and he writes everything about that. No, nothing is spared. You understand? For that reason, Aristotle has done a very fantastic work on logic. So there is no parallel case in the whole human history of man's intellectual pursuits in which a single thinker has brought to completion a new science. So a new science has begun, and it has been brought to completion by Aristotle himself. That doesn't mean that there was no logic before Aristotle. There was logic, but he formulated into a form of independent discipline. If you look at there are some kind of anticipations of logic in many other early doctrines. If you look at Zeno is a earlier Greek philosopher. There is dialectical arguments that you find in Zeno. So there is logic operative there. And there are subtleties sophists. In their arguments you find logic. And there is Socratic method of defining concepts. Definition of concepts. In that, logic is applied. And lastly, while coming to Plato, we see dialogue. Most of his works are in the form of dialogue, dialectic. So that application of logic is found in ancient Greek philosophy even before Aristotle. Aristotle's contribution was he converted into a different science, a very specific science, which can be applied as a tool for knowing the truth or knowing the validity of an argument. So he developed it into a kind of science. Aristotle is considered as the true founder of logic in the sense of valid forms of reasoning, the first one to work it out in detail and to make it a special discipline. So he made it into a special discipline. The Aristotelian logic has held undisputed sway over man's thinking for over 2000 years. The only two exceptions, Francis Bacon in his advocacy of inductive logic and mathematical logicians of the modern times. So what is logic? What is logic? So you understand that it is a special discipline developed by Aristotle. So what is it? It is an important instrument in the acquisition of genuine knowledge and holds that we should not proceed to study, before we proceed to study metaphysics, before we proceed to study any other disciplines, we should learn logic. This is the position of Aristotle. So he himself considers that one has to be very proficient in logic before he starts learning something else. So when we go for doing a PhD, when we give a paper on net, there is a part of logic. Why? Because any researcher should have the basic knowledge of logic. So nobody should proceed to study the first philosophy or the science of essence of things or any other discipline before we have familiarized ourselves with logical thought. So logic is the preliminary science, or sometimes it is known as the science of sciences, the science that enabled you to learn other sciences. And it is a tool of scientific research. It is the toolbox of a philosopher. And it can be applied in every sphere of knowledge. Whatever you study, whether it is biology, chemistry, physics, rocket science, whatever it is, you need to apply logic. Without logic, you will not be able to study any other science. I will try to give you a definition of logic. Logic is the analysis of the form and content of thought, of the processes by which we reach knowledge, and it is the science of correct thinking.
Can you repeat the definition?
I am showing the slide. You just read for yourself. I will read it again. Logic is the analysis of the form and content of thought, of the processes by which we reach knowledge. It is the science of correct thinking. There is thought. What is thought? Something is in your mind. You are thinking of something. Every thought is not meant for getting knowledge. But when a thought becomes a process by which you are acquiring knowledge, there is a particular form and there is a content in that thought. There is a form and content for the thought. In whatever way you express it, there is a form and content for a thought which later becomes a part of knowledge. Even without acquiring knowledge, you can think. You can think of anything like dreaming. Dreaming is also a part of thought. Daydreaming. But it doesn't become a part of your knowledge generally. It can also be, but generally it doesn't. So if you are thinking in order to acquire knowledge, there is a process, there is a content, there is a form for that thought. And there is form and content of the thought, and also there are processes by which we reach knowledge. There are processes by which we reach knowledge. And it is the study about the form and content of thought and the processes by which we reach knowledge. That is logic. And it is about the correct thinking. In order to acquire knowledge, if your thinking pattern is wrong, you will have the wrong idea in your mind. You will acquire something, you will acquire a knowledge that is wrong, that is false. So it is a science of correct thinking. You have to think correctly in order to get correct knowledge.